is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Back with some more Resident Evil 4 Remake gameplay for you. And today I'm going to continue on my trend of Death Island character videos. I already did a Jill Valentine video. You can check that out in the description below. You can also check out my Death Island review down below as well. But today I'm going to be focusing on Leon. I'm going to go over his role and what he did in this Death Island movie, as well as how I think we could possibly see him in the future with post-Death Island content. So, without further ado, let's jump right into this. So the first time we see Leon in this movie, he's on a bicycle, which, let's be honest, it usually doesn't end too well, but nonetheless, he's got a little action sequence where he's trying to recover a kidnapped person. And Maria from Vendetta gets involved, and they have a little nice little sequence there, and basically gets his bike destroyed, and Leon obviously has to have his little one-liner, but nonetheless, that's his first introduction, and next time we see him actually isn't for a little while. We actually see him when he first encounters Jill, when Jill's in the tunnel running about, and they both have a little skirmish, and then they fight off a bunch of lickers together, as that is the first meeting we've seen on screen together with Jill and Leon, but they both kind of acted like they knew each other or were aware of each other's presence, which I can understand, but obviously we've always wanted to see it, and I like their interactions. I definitely could see them really having some cool moments together if given more time, but for what we get, it is enjoyable, and seeing Jill kind of look at Leon like really with all his little corny jokes he brings up too. But nonetheless, they both work together. They're a great tag team, and eventually they go over and discover what the villains are trying to do, and then they go back to the jail prison cell, where that's when everyone except for Jill gets infected, and that's when the main villain basically reminisces about how all of these guys are all suckers and they all have their flaws, and Leon's is working for dirty, corrupt people and keeping them in power, despite saying he's doing it to save and protect the innocent and stuff like that, which is kind of true, because especially if you look at the events of Resident Evil 6 and stuff, that definitely is true. But he says a line in there that I think is really key. His villain says, Leon, he's burnt out. Like, he is basically burnt out. And why I feel like this is really important, especially when you look at Leon in this movie, is if you remember the last movie, his last canon appearance before this was Resident Evil Vendetta. And in that, he was really a different side we've never seen before. He was basically what Chris was in Resident Evil 6. Really just very miserable, depressed, on the booze, and basically just, as I said, he was basically burnt out. Like, we always joke about Leon needs a vacation, but yeah, Leon needs a vacation, but he was just really just not the Leon we've ever seen before. And what I think this is really cool and key is that there was an interview with the person voicing Leon, Matthew Mercer, which is glad to hear him again, and he did an interview and basically was talking about, what's the difference between Leon and Vendetta and why he's so much more cheerful in the Leon we know of in Death Island. And the biggest reason is it basically comes from his companionship, his camaraderie with his teammates. You think about Leon, honestly, he, of the main four characters in Resident Evil, he's the one who's usually by himself the most. Like, he'll have times where he'll team up with somebody, but it wasn't in Resident Evil 6 that he really had a teammate from beginning to end. Usually he's doing these things by himself. He'll meet people here and there, but it's never like traveling with them for a really long extended period of time. He's usually by himself. He isn't like what Claire and Chris and Jill have had, where they've usually had a lot of teammates, or they're working with a big massive group of characters and people that know each other for a while. So you have a guy who's usually by himself most of the time. On top of that, the people he is close to, he hasn't really had a lot of good moments with them as of late. I mean, you think of this, and I actually think this was a little flaw of the movie. I didn't mention this in my review. I mentioned that there wasn't enough Jill, Claire interactions, but there really wasn't any, Leon Claire interactions. Remember, the last time these two had candidly seen each other was Infinite Darkness, and it ended on a really bad, bittersweet tone. And it was like, that's not how you expect a Leon and Claire thing to go down at the end. Maybe have a problem in between, but they've resolved it. But no, it was a very, not a good way to end that. And it's just like, no, Leon and Claire should be getting along. They don't end their thing like that. And it was just very bittersweet and not satisfying. I was hoping you get a moment between these two, but there really isn't. And it's kind of a little disappointing. So, and not only that, but that's one of his close relationships. Another one, obviously, is Ada. And remember, we haven't seen her since Resident Evil 6. So we don't know what happened to her. So all these close people that he's ever been around and teamed up with for an extended period of time, or just either he ended it on bad terms or he hasn't seen them. So he's basically been by himself, and all the people he has teamed up in between have basically all died, and he's just kind of like getting more to the point where he holds himself responsible for their deaths, to the point where he just kind of got depressed and miserable, and as it turned into booze and vendetta. And a big part of that, in which Matthew says, is that I feel like, him meeting Chris and Rebecca in that movie and teaming up basically got him to hey, you can't escape your fate in terms of you fighting against all these bioterrorists, and it sucks, but at least you don't have to be alone. You can share that burden with other people, and as I said, have that party camaraderie. That famous thing I kept saying in my Final Fantasy 16 videos, just having that party camaraderie where you're not alone. Like, yeah, it may not go the way you 100% want it, but you're not alone. And another thing I want to point out is that I honestly feel like with Leon meeting and then having, bonding with extended period of time with Chris was maybe one of the best things that could happen to him. And I don't think he gets enough credit. And I'm not talking about just the fact that he can team up with Chris and have a badass connection there. I'm talking about like from a personal psyche. Most of Leon's, inner close relationships, if you haven't already noticed, we always joke about him being this, this big womanizer, and he's always around all the ladies of the Resident Evil community, but he's never really had that male presence, a consistent one that's kind of been around him, because whenever he gets it or he forms it, that person unfortunately, bites the dust. And, we kind of saw it in Resident Evil 4 Remake, where he started, I think, the bond to get close and understand Luis and learn to trust him, but unfortunately poor Luis meets his end. But he's never really had that before. And I think with Chris, especially in Vendetta, having Chris as another guy that can understand him like that from a little bit of a male perspective, I feel like that did wonders for Chris. And I'm sorry, not wonders for Chris. I guess it did wonders for Chris too, but did wonders for Leon and his psyche, because as I said, we've never seen Leon like that. But I just feel like teaming up with Chris and being like one of those guys that can say, I can look at you. We may have our differences, but I can look at you as one of my bros I can rely on and stuff like that, and understand stuff like that. I feel like that did a lot of good for Leon. I don't think it's talked about enough. So when you see him in this movie, Death Island, he's night and day different. He's not. He's basically the Leon He's the Leon cracking his corny one-liners, having that fun, chirpy demeanor, and someone you probably enjoy being around, but he wasn't miserable and depressed or something like that. And it was really nice for Matthew Mercer to bring that up to light in his little interview he did, talking about Leon, his big differences from the last movie to this one. And you definitely see it in here. Because I also feel like Leon being that way also did wonders for Jill as well, just being around someone like that. So it's kind of like, it comes from full circle. I think Chris did a lot of good things for Leon, his psyche, and I think Leon did a lot of good things for Jill's psyche, just being around a person like that. But nonetheless, basically, after the whole prison thing and Rebecca gives them the cure, Leon gets into a nice action sequence with Maria, and I kind of wish there were a little bit more to it, because, someone pointed out, like, Maria blames Leon for her father's death, but technically she can blame a lot of people. It's not just specifically to Leon. She can blame Chris. She can blame the person who fired the big blast out of the chopper. There's a lot of things she could blame, so I don't know why it's so specific to Leon. I wish they elaborate more on that, but it's a nice little sequence there, and of course Leon ends it with some nice one-liners, of course, and then you have the whole sequence where they're all teaming up together to fight, and it's some nice action moments, and of course Leon got to end the film with his classic one-liners. But the point is, you see Leon in the light you always seen him, not being that depressed, bitter person he was in Vendetta, where he's just seen so many people die and he just doesn't care. And the key is just being surrounded by other individuals. And I feel like that Leon is starting to accept other individuals, and maybe this is him in the future, learning to have more people on his side, not doing these one-man solo things and stuff, because while it's cool to see that, I just feel like it's not good for his psyche and stuff. But Let's analyze post-Death Game. I said Death Game, Death Island. Yeah, it might be Death Game, like it's damn Dynamite getting me here. But basically, Death Island content. Like, what can we see Leon in? And this is going to be a harder one to analyze because with Jill and Chris, it's kind of easy. They're both BSAA members. The BSAA going rogue, it makes sense. But Leon's not BSAA, so how could he be involved? Like, what could we possibly see? Is it a brand new thing? Is it disconnected? Maybe now, maybe he's more involved in this stuff. Maybe he's not just, doing the whole DSO thing or the government. Maybe he's just kind of, trying to help out regardless. Or maybe, hey, maybe he's all in it with Chris or Jill or something like that. And whenever one needs help, the other's there. Who knows? You can do a lot of things. But me personally, what would I like to see Leon in? Obviously, other than seeing him in a brand new adventure post Death Island in a game. Because obviously we see him a lot in the remake, but the remakes, I like to see Leon, honestly. Number one, and I wish we got it here, I like to see him patch things up with Claire. So yeah, you can say a Leon, Claire adventure. I really would, because it's just, you can't have these two characters have what they had in Infinite Darkness and just never, like, resolve it. That's just not cool for me there, personally, but see both these two, because as I said, these two are kind of wild cards in terms of the main characters, where with Jill and Chris it makes sense to BSA, but these two, one with the DSO, the other with TerraSave, maybe you could have a tale in between, or maybe after Resident Evil Village, of these two doing something. But I just really would like to see them patch up stuff and resolve it. And then the other thing, as we talked about, Leon gaining his relationships back and fixing them, obviously, having Chris and Jill, who knows? Maybe, Jill and Leon could have an adventure together. Obviously, people would love to see it. Be a dream team right there, even though I don't know if I could ever say that Leon and Jill is ever going to replace Jill and Chris as a tag team. But nonetheless, it'd be interesting to see. And I don't know, maybe they do some things, with both their organizations working together. But probably not, since there's a lot of drama, obviously, with the BSAA and the whole government thing after Resident Evil 6, or maybe they do something off the books or whatnot. Maybe they finally realize that, hey, you know what, we'll take the villain's words to heart. Maybe we do put too much faith and trust in these organizations we're fighting for, and they don't have the best means of the people, and public only care about themselves. But the last thing I would like to see Leon in, other than a new game, is I also like to see him, this has been something going on for a long time, and anyone who's a Leon fan knows where I'm going to go with this, is that I think we kind of need some type of resolution with the whole situation between him and Ada. Now, I don't know what the resolution is going to be in tune with and how it's going to be resolved, but just an answer, because I think, as people have pointed out, these two are getting older, and they've been doing this song and dance for 2 decades now, and there just needs to be some type of resolution, some type of closure, and some type of, middle ground to really focus on. Like, you just can't. I just don't want another adventure of both these two, and it ends the same way it does every time, with them walking away from each other. I mean, it's only so many times you can jump scare someone until they just get, well, as Chris said, numb to it, and where it just doesn't affect you anymore. So I like some type of just resolution that they can come to a middle ground for each other, because as I said, I like Leon to patch up his relationship with everybody. I like Leon. I don't ever want to see Leon. I'm glad he went through that phase, because it builds on his character, but I never want to see Leon be as he was in Venom again. He's the guy that always kind of makes you smile and laugh, and see him like that, that's not the Leon we want to see. And and obviously with his close people having, the events happening to them between him and Leon, it's understandable why eventually it broke and turned it that way. But, his ladies need to come back in his life and make him smile again. But nonetheless, that is my opinion and how I view Leon's role in Death Island, and how we might possibly see him in the future post-Death Island. But that is my opinion. I want to hear your guys' opinion. Do you think Leon teaming up with more people in the future is the best course of action for him? Because I do. It's like I've seen enough of him always lone wolfing it. I like to see him with other people and see how he has cool interactions with them. But regardless, how do you see him in the future of post-Death Island? Do you see him, like, how would you put him in there? Would you just put him as some, like, spin-off adventure? Would you maybe have it tied into the BSAA? You think he'll ever patch up things with Claire, and for that matter, you think him and Ada will ever come to some type of middle ground, or are they just going to repeat the same song and dance? Will Capcom actually have some balls and come to the middle ground with that? But a lot of things we could think about and discuss, but nonetheless, I think it's safe to say at some point we're going to have to see Leon in a brand new adventure post Death Island around the 7, 8, and 9 timelines. But nonetheless, that is going to be it. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully I can see you guys back in the next one. Thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.